Welcome to November, everyone. I am Shay with Curate Soul, and this is our November bhavana video log. So I wasn't around in October, well I was, but I did not create one of these video logs for my monthly content. I took some time to step away. I had a fairly busy October and very grateful for all that I had going on. I took some time for myself and took a pottery class in October, but I also hosted a workshop. I co-hosted a workshop on Sundays with a friend of mine and fellow yoga nidra and yoga teacher, Jen, and she lives in Colorado. And so we kind of did this, it was a workshop called Learn to Rest, Not Quit. And so we incorporated practices that you can weave throughout your day and your life to create more spaciousness and more rest, especially in times that feel a little overwhelming. And this time of year can often feel that way for many of us. So it was an honor to kind of co-teach with her and share these practices. I also then participated in an Ayurvedic workshop by Margaret James called Kitchen Witch. And learning to dive a little deeper into kitchen as altar and creating anything from really nourishing meals to things like herbal salts, infused oils. So I really loved that. So again, grateful for the ability to take time to be a student as well. And so it felt more of like an inward turning for me and a little less of a need to kind of be out and share some things. But I certainly missed the opportunity to connect on this level with my newsletter and the offerings from October. I am back now for November. We have a brand new animal, and I'm excited to share these particular qualities and the Ayurvedic and yogic philosophies that kind of interweave with this particular animal's qualities. So this month we are working with the vulture. And again, this is from Kim Cran's The Wild Unknown Spirit Animal Oracle deck. I'm sorry, I don't have my deck pulled out today, but you can certainly Google this particular card and see the image of the vulture. The qualities or the energetics or characteristics of this vulture card are the vulture is seen as a guardian and a purifier. It's essential for rebalance, and it's also this idea that nothing is wasted. So vultures balance our ecosystems. They prevent the spread of disease, and they do the dirty work that not many animals want to do, and certainly a lot of humans are not interested in doing. So they're cleaning up a lot of messes, ones that we often are making ourselves. And so the vulture is very important to our ecosystem and the balance of our ecosystem. And it's also an animal that's often maybe not easily understood, or maybe accepted or liked. It's certainly not thought of as a cute animal by most of us. So there may be some resistance to this idea of the vulture and those qualities and those energetics. I'll say when I first pulled this card, I was like, this is going to be interesting. How can I weave this idea of the purifier, the guardian energy, into my offerings this month? But then as I started diving deeper, the idea for it being essential for rebalance, and especially the idea of nothing is wasted, really began to draw forth some of the teachings that have been offered to me over the years from my teacher. So I'll start with the element of the vulture, which is air. The vulture is a creature of the air, and it's a reminder to kind of zoom out and get a look at the larger picture. Often creatures of the air also have very good eyesight, and so they're able to see the details even from a far off distance. They have, again, great vision, and so this idea of seeing things that maybe other people don't see. So a reminder to kind of zoom out and take a look at the larger picture without being sometimes so focused on things. We need to kind of expand our vision, our perception, and take in a little more than maybe just what's immediately around us or immediately going on with us in our lives. The vulture is a reminder to clean up our space, to clarify, because when we clarify, we reveal wisdom. Often what we thought was a mistake or a tragedy is and can be a blessing in disguise. It's that whole, hindsight's 2020. We might not see it when we're in the thick of it in the moment, but when we are through it and we've stepped back and we've implemented and been able to digest that experience, we often see that it was exactly what we needed, or we can begin to pull the wisdom and the lessons from it. What may seem hideous has its own beauty. And so again, I mentioned that we often don't look at the vulture or see the vulture as a cute animal or something that's lovable or everyone really likes a vulture. It's often seen as an animal that's like nasty and dirty because it's doing the dirty work. However, it has its own beauty, and the beauty of the vulture is that it's cleaning up messes. It's stopping the spread of disease, and it's needed to keep our ecosystems balanced. So everything in life has its purpose and has its place and has its beauty. We sometimes just need to zoom out or flip our perspective, kind of look at it a different way. So nature sees value in everything that exists. What seems rotten or ugly has potential to be transmuted into something beneficial. And so these are just the deeper lessons of the vulture, this idea of rebalance, this idea of nothing is wasted. All that you might wish to deny or discard has value and can be repurposed and reintegrated. So this can apply to the things that we don't really love about ourselves, often called our shadow side, those traits or those habits that we feel that are unlovable, that we don't like. They have purpose, they have value. They're often there to help us grow and expand and to bring wisdom into how we move through our lives and how we can make shifts and changes to create a life that feels more in alignment with our desires. This also applies to things outside of the self, things that we may find repulsive or things that we want to avoid. They have their value, they have their lessons, and they can be, again, repurposed and reintegrated. Depending on what those are, will depend on how you approach that kind of flipping of the perspective. And so again, let's move back to this air element. These are just some deeper lessons of the vulture. The air element, vulture, creature of the sky, zoom out, see the bigger picture, but also being able to see maybe some details that are missed. We are in the season of Ayurvedically Vata, which is the combination of the air and space elements. These qualities are cool, rough, dry, mobile, subtle, and light. And so we can see that in things like the temperature changing. Things are getting a little cooler. The wind may be picking up. We may notice that the leaves are beginning to change color, get rough, and fall to the ground. And so there's that mobile and dry and rough quality in nature, which then reflects in us. So we may notice things like feeling a little more dehydrated, wanting more fluids throughout the day, our skin becoming dry, our nasal passages becoming dry, our mind kind of moving quickly, not able to focus on certain things. So we'll have these same qualities of mobility, of lightness, dryness, roughness in the mind and body as well as in nature. And in Ayurveda, we balance with opposites. And so we're working with these qualities of vastness and spaciousness, this month with the vulture. And so how do we, as we create this vastness and this spaciousness, especially to maybe flip our perspective, to create clarity and to reveal wisdom, what keeps us grounded? What makes us feel warm, soothed, anchored, nourished? So those can be daily practices. Maybe it's a cup of warm lemon water every morning. Maybe it's taking time each week to run a bath for yourself and just kind of soak in the water. Maybe it's eating something that feels very nourishing to you, especially when we're doing work, a more subtle work that's often called spiritual work, which is related to the elements of air and space, because it can be very heady. It can be very spacious. It's subtle work. And so what keeps us anchored? We need to make sure that we have an anchor when we're reflecting on our nature and ourself. So that brings me to kind of the two focal points that I am working with this month in regards to yogic philosophy and Ayurvedic philosophy and Ayurvedic thought. And I just mentioned a little bit of this Ayurvedic thought and this idea of the air element and how do we balance that. But also at the same time, we need those qualities of spaciousness so that we can begin to reveal wisdom. We just need to make sure that there's just enough spaciousness, that it's not too much that we feel ungrounded and anxious and flighty or forgetful. But then not so much that we feel stagnant and held down and that we're not able to reveal that wisdom, that there's a lack of clarity somewhere. And so finding that in our daily practices, in our daily habits, whether it's food, whether it's a spiritual or inspirational practice, whether it's movement. So just thinking about those opposite qualities to the air and space, to vata season. So again, those are dry, light, rough, subtle, mobile. So we're looking for warm, moist, heavy, dense, and just to create that balance. So from a yogic philosophy perspective, what appeared to me as I was kind of diving into the qualities of the vulture was one of the niyamas. So niyama means observance. It's part of the Eightfold Path, the yamas and niyamas, and there are 5. And the one I want to focus on for this month is saucha. And in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, there is a sutra for each yama and for each niyama, except for saucha, which has 2 sutras dedicated to it. And that's because there are 2 different aspects to this idea of saucha. Saucha is often translated as purity or cleanliness. And let me dive into this a little more, because when we just give it that single word translation, purity, cleanliness, often what may happen is that we get this idea or this impression that we're dirty or that we're toxic. It's another negative label that we have a tendency to place on ourselves. That is not what this means at all. And so there are some other translations that I feel maybe dive into this in a different way that brings a little more open-heartedness to it, a little more softness to it, that really kind of gets to the nectar of what Patanjali means in these 2 sutras. So the twofold meaning, we're looking at an internal process, but also an external process. And both of those can be relational to ourselves, relational to ourselves internally as well as externally, and then relationally to the world around us and to others that we are in community with. So sutra, the first one, 2.40, and this is a translation by Nishkala Joy Devi. Through simplicity and continual refinement, saucha, the body, thoughts, and emotions become clear reflections of the self within. Through simplicity and continual refinement, saucha, the body, thoughts, and emotions become clear reflections of the self within. So let's take a moment to look at this. So this particular saucha is, definition of saucha, or meaning of saucha, is relational to our person, our individual nature. And so we're purifying our bodies, our thoughts, our words. And as we purify ourselves physically and mentally, we become less cluttered, less heavy, and it brings about brightness and clarity. So from an Ayurvedic perspective, our physical body is composed of the elements of earth and water. And those qualities of earth and water are heavy and dense and sticky. Like attracts like. And so our human form has the tendency to attract things that are heavy, dense, and sticky, whether that be something physical, like putting on physical weight, or whether it be something subtle, like hanging on to thoughts or emotions or experiences. This in Ayurveda is what causes the aging process, is this heaviness, this accumulation. And so we have purifying practices in Ayurveda as well as life in general that allow us to shed some of this accumulation. We have to balance with opposites. And so things like neti pot, so using the neti pot, or oiling the nasal passages, nasya, pranayama, so focusing our prana, our life force, controlled breath work, asana, meditation, showering every day, some sort of movement practice, the way that we are choosing the foods that nourish us. These are all and can be forms of saucha on an individual level, internally and externally. So we're using this wisdom of what makes us feel bright, spacious, but at the same time grounded and have clarity, energized. And so we don't want to feel heavy and sticky, like there's no motivation, that there's lethargy, that we're stuck somewhere. And so we need these particular practices, whatever they may be for you individually, to create this purification process. Again, it helps with the aging process on a physical level, an aging process on the mental level as well. The mind is staying sharp, it's not dull. And then also on the spiritual level, that we're able to see clearly our divine nature, that self within us. The second aspect of saucha is related in Sutra 2.41. Saucha reveals our joyful nature and the yearning for knowing the self blossoms. Saucha reveals our joyful nature and the yearning for knowing the self blossoms. Again, that was a translation by Nishkala Joy Devi. And when she speaks of self here, she's speaking of the big S self. So that divine self, that part of the universal consciousness here. And so what this is saying, 2.41 directly follows 2.4. And so saucha follows each other here as we're beginning to purify the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body. What happens is when we're not accumulating all this stuff that we accumulate in our lives, then we really begin to understand our true nature and we yearn to know more. We yearn to continue these practices. We yearn to dive deeper into knowing the self, and we yearn for that connectedness, that understanding of the universal consciousness that all of us hold within us, that is a part of all the beings in the world and all things in the world. And so it's encouraged that we have these external practices. When I say external here, I mean not just outside of the body, but external meaning our physical form, the human form. so that relationally we understand how all other beings, all other things around us are pure and divine as well. And we're not separate from those things. And we begin to yearn and long to know those things and to relate to them and know our connectedness with each. And so it's also an idea, Sutra 2.41, is also this idea of relating to all the things in our life that happen around us. So taking each instance for what it is, not projecting our thoughts or our feelings onto it, not needing to change or control the situation. So just being with what is and in the purity of that moment. So that's also the idea of Sutra 2.41. So this cleansing strengthens the body, insulates the mind, and is preparing us for the awakening of our consciousness. So again, 2.40, Sutra 2.40, the actual practices of purification lead to the ability to awaken the consciousness. If we're not preparing ourselves for it, we're unable to know when it arrives, or we're unable to hold that experience. It may come to us, it may not. If it comes to us, we often cannot integrate it. We can't hold on to that experience so that we understand that there's a thread always connecting us back to that part of ourselves. So our intention is to kind of lighten the load that we carry through this life. Where can you lighten the load this month? What are you carrying that you can begin to kind of scrub away, to let go of, to create clarity and then wisdom around it? Begin to kind of come back to the self and this true nature, this inherent joy within you. So back to the relational quality to that around us and seeking the purity in each moment by allowing it to be what it is. To be with life, to be with others, to be with things as they are, and not wish them to be a different way or wish them to be a way in what we think or expect them to be. So this is the idea of what it brings to mind right now in this moment is a book actually that I just finished recently, Wintering by Catherine May. It brings to me this idea of wintering. We all winter, whether we know it or not, and certainly whether we like it or not. We cycle through seasons within ourselves, just like nature does. Just like the world does, we're cycling. And so often when we find ourselves in a winter, this time of dormancy, this time of maybe not a lot of growth, things feeling stagnant and heavy, saucha is this idea of just allowing it to be what it is, without changing it, without needing to control it, without thinking that it needs to be a different way, that it's wrong for us to be in this space or this mood or this mind frame. Just being with what is. That is part of saucha. That is that purity. So when saucha is kind of like alchemy. It's removing, alchemy is the process of removing impurities from gold. And so it's the process of saucha for us as humans is this finding this luminescence within. So again, scrubbing ourselves of anything that's heavy, that's blocking our inner light, that divine light within us. So the next thing I would like to speak to is this idea of tantra. And this word is thrown around often, currently. And the tantra teachings that I come from are different than some of the neo-tantra that's kind of very popular right now in the Western culture, the Western world. And the teachings that I'm sharing are based in Sri Vidya Tantra and the Himalayan tradition. And from this aspect and from the teachings that have been shared with me, Tantra means to weave, to expand, and to spread. And Tantra has many more meanings, like many other Sanskrit words. But this particular aspect of Tantra that I would like to lean into is this idea of weaving. The goal of Tantra is to awaken Shakti, so this power that we have, the power of the divine force within. So Shakti is this power of the divine force within. And the goal of Tantra is to awaken this. As a spiritual path, Tantra emphasizes purification of the mind, the heart, and the cultivation of a spiritually illuminating philosophy of life. So Tantra certainly takes into consideration and practice saucha, the things like the purification of the body through things like neti, showering, full body oil massage, so abhyanga, lubricating the nasal passages. There's many different practices, as well as things like purifying the mind and the subtle body through asana or movement practice, pranayama, meditation. So that's a spiritual path. Tantra as a science experiments with techniques whose effectiveness depends on the precise application of mantra, yantra, ritual use of specific materials, mudras, mental exercises. So that's a little bit of a deeper path that I'm not going to pull on that thread today. I'm going to come back to this spiritual path of Tantra and how we're interweaving it with the bhavana of the vulture and saucha. So I mentioned earlier in regards to this kind of relational aspect of saucha, Sutra 2.41, understanding and yearning for knowing the self and how that blossoms when we're doing these other purification practices, when we're lightening our load and able to reconnect to that inherent joy within or without it. So those around us that are also inherent joy and deserve to be joyful. I mentioned Catherine May's book, Wintering, and that idea of saucha asks us to be in each moment, allowing it to be what it is without needing to change it or control it. That is a tantric teaching right there. Tantra wants us to weave everything together, that every aspect of our life is meant to deepen our awareness of our divine nature. Not just those ecstatic moments in meditation where we merge with the one consciousness, not just in those moments of an asana practice where we feel like we've had a life-changing experience on the mat. It's not in that breath work. It's all not just in those moments. It's also in those moments where we are laying on the ground, crying, sobbing, feeling like we can't take another step. It's in those moments of loss of a loved one, of death, of loss of anything that just racks us internally and externally. We are meant to take all of these experiences in life so that we are able to better understand our divine nature, that no part of us at any point in our life is separate from the divine. And so that circles back around to this idea of nothing is wasted. The teaching of the vulture, nothing is wasted. Everything can reveal wisdom. The suffering that we've experienced has not gone to waste. Wisdom and understanding has arisen or will arise, and it will serve you as you move into the rest of your life. So even those things that seem unwanted, ugly, unsure of, those moments are needed too. Just like the vulture is needed to balance our ecosystems. As a particular job. And just like those moments of our life that are tough, that feel like a wintering, that are uncomfortable and challenging, those have their moments too. Just like the joy, the happiness, the elation, the peace, all of it has the moments too. So that is our November bhavana. I also wanted to mention that I have some upcoming events. I have only one more kind of special event for this year. That is Sunday, December the 4th at New Yoga Now. So if you're here in Savannah, I hope you'll join. I am co-teaching with Erin Lambright, and we are offering, it's a yoga nidra experience. And so I'll dive into a little bit of the history, theory, philosophy of yoga nidra, the styles. So it'll be a short little lecture, but then Erin will guide you through some movement. She will also share with everyone her personal experience with yoga nidra and the benefits that she has received from the practice. So testimony of how powerful a practice yoga nidra can be, and then I'll guide you through a deep relaxation yoga nidra practice as well. And then that's kind of it for me on like a workshop level this for the remainder of the year. I will be still teaching my public classes here in Savannah, and then I'm beginning the process of turning inward and preparing for next year. I've got some things lined up. I will be co-hosting a workshop in March with a good friend, Trina. It is a deep rest and shamanic drumming and Reiki workshop. So more details to come soon. If you subscribe to the newsletter, you'll see a little bit about it coming up. And you can definitely check out my website as more information and details come available. I'll be adding that. I will also be bringing back Nourished, the Ayurvedic Spring Cleanse, and I will be hosting at least one Ayurvedic workshop here in Savannah in the spring as well. So stay tuned. We've got lots of fun things coming up. I'll be opening the books up for private clients and mentorships once again after the new year. So if you're interested in working with me, shoot me an email, send me a message, get on the list, and you'll have priority access to that if you reach out before I open the books. I'll make sure that you are the first to know about it. So I hope you enjoy this month's bhavana. Any questions, any comments, any feedback, any insights, I would love to hear from you. And thank you so very much for your time and your energy. It's so good to be able to connect with you. Take care.